Welcome to the Archeage Podcast. I'm Germ. I'm here with Rod and Greg, and we are going to talk about Archeage. So this week, we're going to basically recap what we did in our past excursions and maybe in the last week or so with Archeage. And I'll start it off by talking about the fishing tournament on Saturday, which was very entertaining. It was a first for me. It was very cool. Greg kind of took us in and showed us the ropes. That was very kind of you to mention that, Greg.
Yes, and then everyone beat me.
Yeah, I got a gargantuan and then a lucky back-to-back. It was like, hey, it's beginner's luck.
That was awful.
And it's bad when you get bet out with the guy with zero fishing proficiency.
Yeah, it was pretty hilarious. So I came in 25th. How about you, Rod?
I think mine was 43 this week.
Greg, how'd you do?
Oh, well, I see you guys on the list, which means that I didn't even score in the top 100.
Bummer. So,
65.
Aside from the fishing tournament, I managed to get my fishing up to 35k proficiency, and I had a bucket of homecoming coins that I used to get a fishing hauler. And on my first excursion just outside Unisteer, I encountered the Delphinad ghost ship because I'm unfamiliar with its pathing, and it nukified me.
Yeah,
It's a good start to
getting the
fishing.
pass.
Yeah, I'm a little bit sad. Anyway, I went home, I paid the 5 gold for some Shadigan's sand, restored that baby back to good as new, and took it out again and made myself a little bit of money, broke even for the day.
Yeah, those ghost ships are horrifying.
But yeah, they are, especially when they come out of nowhere. I gotta figure a way to turn up my my draw distance or something, because it just totally sprung on me. But aside from that, I've really just been auto-fishing all the way to 35k proficiency. I think I did it in 1 week. I was chugging labor pots like they were candy bottles. Yeah, bottles of candy. Tell your kids. It's called Pepsi.
Yeah, that alone can be addicting, really.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was pretty much my week. How about you, Rod?
Well, for me, it's I'm just brand new to the game pretty much, so my first week has been pretty much just grinding up to level 51. Managed to do that and basically just trying to get a sample of everything that's in Archeage to kind of do, like a bit of fishing, a bit of farming, a bit of, trade packing, actually a lot of trade packing. I managed to do the 5 Grimgas Rifts or whatever and get the farm hauler for 3 days, so I wasted a lot of labor just doing the Rookborne to Falcorth Plains trade run for a good 500 gold starting fund.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's been pretty much focused on leveling, other than catching the merchant ship that got ganked as it came into Asteria there the other day and managed to
awesome.
steal a pack. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting into the more end-game content with the boats and out to seas doing maybe some pirate activities. It's a big interest. It's way better profit than spending hours upon hours mining rock.
I remember we were just discussing how you could wait in Solus for potentially people to come in and then try to gank packs off of them. And as we were having this conversation, where we were kind of reminiscing with Greg, and this happened, and Rod managed to scam one of the packs that fell to the bottom of the ocean there.
Yeah, it was a good little bit of profit. But other than that, in my week since I've been playing now, I've got a nice thatched farmhouse built. I got up to level 51, and I've got 2 16x16 farms running. And just starting to look at how to make more money and get some guildas, because I want to start getting some of the larger sea vessels and vehicles.
Right. So Rod is the new player, and I'm the returning player. I had a max level with, Hasla gear when that meant something back in the day, just after Aurora. And Greg is our veteran. So, Greg, tell us what you did in the last week.
Well, unfortunately, I am a slave to the events. So I have been doing the basics like CR, my merit quests, and then events. It's the Zodiac event. The prizes are too much fun for me.
I did pop over to do those after, and get the little Zodiac owls and stuff going on. I haven't looked at the prizes yet, though. I'm hoping they're tasty.
Yeah, it's when they do events where not everything is bound on equip, where you can actually sell them if you want to, or trade them among your characters and everything. But I guess besides what I just mentioned, everything has been So exciting having you guys joining me.
Well, it's awesome. We're really glad that you got us into the guild. So you got myself and Rod and my missus into the guild as well. So that's super awesome. We really appreciate it.
Well, you all are super welcome and nice folks, so it's awesome.
Cool. So I guess we'll move along right into our main topic of the week, which is the new player experience. So being as I'm a returning player starting a new character on a new server, I've been kind of going through the new player experience that they've got set up, which is much different than it used to be. And for Rod, I guess, Rod, what's your story with the new player experience?
Well, with new player, I mean, I did play this game when it was originally first launched, but I never made it past, I think, level 10, just with server stabilities, login queues, and just real-life schedule and stuff like that when it came out. I never got too into the game until, like, now. So so far it's been pretty good. I quickly realized, though, even though this game is free-to-play, when it comes to new players, you quickly realize how important your labor is and how important that Patreon status can be. That was the biggest thing I took away from being a new player.
Yeah, the patron status is key. The $15 that you spend really just pays dividends out. You can honestly keep your patron status going with just the loyalty tokens that you get on your, if you started a North American character and a European character. You get a labor pool on both and a token pool on both. You can sell the stuff you get from tokens to simply buy Apex and continue your patron. So really that initial $15 will keep you in subscribed patron for, indefinitely. It could if you chose.
It takes a bit of effort, though. I think probably maybe during the first month it might be a little bit hard to continue on, but after the second month, once you get your skills up, your level up, and your proficiency's up, I think, yeah, definitely. The first month, again, where you're just trying to figure everything out, again, it is a little bit, it might be a little bit rough to keep patron status going just off of that first $15 purchase.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but managing both NA and so if you're playing on North America, for people who don't know, is if you're playing on North America, your labor pool and loyalty tokens for logging in every day if you're patron, or even just playing, are NA specific. So if you go and change your drop-down menu on your glyph to Europe and log in every day, you also get a separate set of loyalty tokens, and your labor pool is kept separate over there as well. So you can play on both sides and basically use one side as just a gold farm to buy Apex to get credits on your account, which are global between NA and Europe, and then Apex your account that way.
Yeah, that's the method I've been doing. I used my old account, the money I had on it from back in the day, to basically set myself up with Patron immediately because I already had enough to buy 2 Apex on that character, and then some.
Yeah, that was a good move.
No, it was so good. And I managed to convince the missus to, spend the $15 and just get herself Patron set up because she was having a really tough time. But we'll get into the details of her experiencing it as a free-to-play player in a minute. I wanted to hear, Greg, about launch and your perspective as a new player when you first started playing Archeage.
Well, I'm from Alpha, so I knew what I was getting into as far as the stress of finding housing and land. But yeah, the launch was shaky. There were simply too many people.
Well, and the labor system too, if I recall, at launch, that was the main thing too, because if you were Patreon at launch, you got 10 labor for being logged on, but only 5 for being logged off. And if you were free to play even at launch, you got 5 for being online and nothing for being offline. So everybody was, AFK, which didn't help the server congestion at all.
Yeah, that made the population much worse.
Yeah, I didn't play at launch. I played just prior to the launch of Aurora. So, I hit 50, and had Hasla by the time Aurora launched, but we still had these problems with queues, and, it had an AFK kick timer, and I was playing free-to-play back then, before I managed to get my Patron enabled.
Yeah, now it seems like the AFK for population seems to have stabilized, server loads have stabilized, so, even if you are free to play now, if you have a computer that you can leave on all the time and leave your character on, by all means, you can just do that and keep your labor going, and that'll help you out a lot.
Yes, it does, and that's what I actually recommended my fiancé do for the first probably week that she was playing, because without labor, I mean, the game is just, it grinds down to a halt of just doing the quests.
Yeah, I mean, even then, the quest will require you to use labor to get items or craft items or to identify items. And I mean, you can't gear up, you can't quest, you can't. Labor is really the key to this game, and getting only 5 every 5 minutes as opposed to 10, and being able to generate it while being offline is, I mean, Patreon pays for itself just there.
It does. I completely agree. So in the beginning, in the early stages, Greg, when it first launched and we had, you had these issues, but you were still able to fall in love with the game and stick with it. So tell us what was that grabbed you so much about the game?
I think that it's one of the only MMORPG games out there that you really feel like you can live in. It's not just something where you turn it on and turn it off. Something where you truly feel you're experiencing. I think that has to do with land ownership in the real world, nothing instanced, housing, freedom. It's definitely got some nice sandbox qualities, but I think it's the personalization that really pulls you in.
Yeah, I agree. I like that the crafting system reflects that, and that everything is like it's part of some larger whole. You just need to find the recipe, and then you can just make so much stuff in this game.
I was always blown away with every other MMO that I've played, where if you wanted to make something, you had to go out of the game and research it elsewhere. And with Archeage, you simply press O, and everything is right there. I don't know why that was so difficult.
Oh, the folio system is, I enjoy it. It's excellent for new players. They can just learn everything they need to know.
Yeah, having the full craft menus in game is a great asset. You don't have to most games you do have to go on YouTube or just Google things to find out, hey, where do I get this item, or not just the item but the recipe itself, right?
Which is ridiculous because, well, I mean, yeah, it's more of a hassle, but it's also pulling you out of the game that you didn't want to leave in the first place.
Right. So when I came back to the game as a returning player, I found that they had changed a lot of stuff. They added in like a new tutorial section that explained siege equipment, and it had a much more comfortable easing into the game. It kind of like shows you everything straight out the gate now. Rob, what do you think about that?
Well, actually, I skipped the tutorial. I'm bad for doing that, but I mean, just starting off. I mean, for the first few levels, you don't feel it's just like almost any MMO. You're just looking at leveling up, getting into the content. But I find like as soon as you get around level 30, which is about the halfway mark, is when the game, you start to get involved in the world events, and you don't have to wait. Like most MMOs, the game doesn't really start until you get max level. And I find with Archeage, it's as a new player coming in, you can start getting into like the events. You mightn't be able to be the most effective, but you can at least provide like a contribution to the events or the world, bosses, even at level 30, like the Greater Rift carrying the packs for the group and stuff. Former MMO experience, you go into it and basically everybody tells you can't do anything until you get to the end game, and I find that's not the case with here, which keeps you engaged, and it's one of the reasons why I went and got Patreon right away.
Okay, so that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, do you feel that as a under-leveled and under-geared player, or when you were, did you feel that the world was too hostile with all the high-geared players? And like, I know pay-to-win is kind of it's like a dirty word, but it's an unfortunate reality in this game is you can turn your money into in-game gold, and therefore people can acquire equipment without actually having to pay for it. Do you find that as a new player coming into the game with nothing, that the odds are too highly stacked against you with so many well-geared players?
Well, right now I'm 51, so I'm finding, like, now I'm getting into the zones where it's open PvP at all times, and yeah, as soon as I see a 55, I know I gotta hide around a corner or whatever, because they're going to just destroy me in, like, a few shots. But when it comes to, like, the pay-to-win, I mean, almost every MMO nowadays has some sort of way to convert your real money into in-game currency, which can then be used to to buy the gear. And I mean, for me now, I mean, years ago, I used to hate that kind of mechanic because I was, a high schooler. I had the free time to go and grind out all my gear myself. But now that I'm an adult, I'm working full time. It's like, oh, you know what? I can spend $10 and get my item in the game or get myself geared up instead of having to spend like 15 hours. I can spend an hour or half an hour of work, and just get it. And I mean, it's a convenience thing really, but everybody has it's the same kind of option, or what was I trying to say? Everybody has the ability to get the gear. It's just some people just get it quicker because they can just, use the real life assets for it.
Right. And I think that this whole free-to-play versus pay-to-win, this is like a whole separate topic on its own. But just as a comment on it, I tend to agree there's always a bigger fish anyway, whether they spent the time and grinded it out or they spent the money and bought it. Either way, there was going to be someone with better gear than me at pretty much every point in the game, right?
Yeah, as a new player, I don't feel this game is very pay to win. I do feel it is essential that you do pay for patron status at least, just so, I mean, only having 2,000 labor and getting half the labor generation is the big thing. But when it comes to like being able to buy money items and then sell them in the in-game auction house, that's, again, I mean, that's not a big thing to me anymore nowadays. I don't find it's a big power spike for people. It's just a shortcut, to be honest.
All right, so here's a question for Greg, in the same vein of topic. Greg, you are a veteran player. You've played the game for many, many, many hours. You almost own the entire peninsula of Yenistir, of Cairnord. But your gear score is a lot lower than someone who may have been playing the game for that long and working on gear. So what are your thoughts on gear and how important it is to your enjoyment of the game?
I'm glad you brought that up. I guess it all kind of falls into what your priorities are. My priority, like you said, was land. I have definitely fallen behind as far as gear goes. In fact, my guild recently helped me tier up my weapon and my armor because I needed the abyssal crystal, several of them. I guess it just all comes down to choice, so it doesn't bother me in the slightest that my gear score is slightly behind because I knew what I was focusing on. It was just me grabbing land and working on that was more important because I saw that was a true limited resource and needed to be focused on. But now I'm working more on my gear, and I really want to get a tier 5.
Right. So, but what you're saying is basically that it didn't affect your enjoyment of the game about how high your gear score was.
No, it didn't bother it at all. I just knew that I was going to be susceptible. I was going to be a victim more than I could have been, and oftentimes was. It's very difficult for me to concentrate at the moment because I'm watching Rod jump over his cows on his house.
Always a laugh.
He's done it, I think, 100 times.
I'm not even in the game right now, or I am, but I'm not focusing on it. But anyways, so basically, coming from a new player perspective, do you think that having like such a gear focused system, do you think that affects the new player in any way, or is that just really like totally out of their orbit until the end game?
Well, I guess I would say Archeage is the best. Has best handled that as they could. For instance, they're constantly giving packs to new players to help them improve. Like, for instance, about 2 months ago was a pack that came out that the gear score was actually close to the one I have now, even though I can tier up and mine's more valuable because I can upgrade it. I think they help out with that a lot with what they hand out to people, and it's really nice. A lot of players that have been playing don't like that, but I don't find that being a negative in any way at all. In fact, they've actually started giving that to the players that are in the game all the time anyways. They're giving us the same packs, which is nice. So we can hand it to an alt if we wanted to.
You're talking about the Homecoming or the Bloodsong pack, right?
I think it might have been one before that. I cannot remember what it was called. But I messed up and I kind of got the wrong gear. I chose the wrong choice. You could choose any type of permanent gear you could get, and I kind of messed that up. I went for the same gear as I had, and then it was useless. I was like, well, why didn't I go for some plate? I was caught off guard with that. I was like, oh, look at this, a gift. I was so excited I couldn't even think.
You're just like, oh, I just want the same thing all over again. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I was like,
oh man.
The thing with gear too is it's only the only reason I feel underpowered too is because, well, I'm coming into an established server. I knew that when I first started on this world that, I'm coming into a world that's been here since launch. Everybody's, well established. The economy's well established. Everybody's got their gear. It's not like, if I went to a brand new server and there was already servers a few days old, there's already max level players with gear because they just, bought it with money. That's a different thing. But here on this established world, again, it's I know what I was coming into, and that's why I don't feel like I'm behind in gear or whatnot. And I am using the Homecoming gear stuff, which gives me a gear score equivalent to Greg here.
Right, and from what I'm looking at, apparently just getting your first tier of Obsidian stuff, it's really not that bad. I mean, you can buy it for pretty cheap. I think each piece of the armor will run you like under 100 gold now. With the weapons maybe costing more, but that's pretty good for like your very, very first tier of endgame gear. And you can build it all and grind it all yourself if you want. You can go acquire all the items and just craft it.
In regards to the pay-to-win aspect, I want to say that every MMO is pay-to-win. Basically, you can, whether it's set up by the company, where you can buy gold from other sources, which in every game is illegal, that makes it pay to win. The aspects in Archeage, they just provide an option where you can get gold and have things a little faster. Like, for instance, armor and weapons, you can buy pre-made armor and weapons from the auction house if you make that investment. But they made it very, very clear because of what the community... They're very good at listening to the community, that they will not have pay-to-win from the company. So you can't go in and buy this awesome weapon or armor from the actual game market. You can only rely on other players, which I think is pretty cool, from the auction house.
Yeah, I like that. It wraps it all back up into the game economy and makes sure that... whatever happens, at least it's happening in-game and a player is benefiting from it rather than a company from selling power, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And I don't know about as far as I know, every other place where Archeage is available, like Korea or Russia, they have stats on their costumes. But we couldn't have stats on our costumes because you can get the costumes in the market and people said it was pay to win. So it's instantly eliminated.
Got it. So because of the stigma that we have over here against pay to win, that caused them to make design choices?
Yeah, they stripped it from the market. Every single costume had every stat removed. Whereas in other places, some costumes have some really awesome stats.
I can appreciate that though, because yes. Even the Homecoming gear, which was a gift to anybody who returned to the game, it's time limited. It's 30 days. So it's basically like an incentive. Hey, listen, we know you've been away from the game for a while. Here, we'll get you geared up, equivalent to, the starting tier of final endgame gear. But you don't got it forever. You got it long enough just so you can probably go out and earn the gear on yourself. And that's good. Whereas if, you could just go out and buy this stuff, that is, I would consider pay-to-win kind of stuff. But
well, the Homecoming gear is actually not very good. I compared it against the armor you can find off the mobs in Aurora, and it's not as good as the armor that drops from those mobs. But it is like a level 50 gear set, so it's much better than if you didn't do anything or you didn't do the quest line to get your quest gear, because the game will gear you out completely. You don't need to go and buy weapons and armor as you're playing the game. The game is going to throw gear at you the whole way through, you will always pretty much have gear for whatever level of content you're doing, which I thought was good, because in some games, you need to go out of your way to be like, okay, I'm level 20 now, I better go on the auction house and buy up some level 20 stuff, because the game might not provide that stuff to me.
Yeah, and I can appreciate too, like crafting your gear in this game is real important. I'm so used to the other MMOs where a lot of times, MMORPGs in fact, where the crafted gear is usually like the worst gear you can get, and all the gear usually came from bosses or end-game events, right?
Right, but for the new player, the crafting system is really, it's kind of unapproachable in the beginning. You need to be set up with a farm. You really have to be established somewhere for you to make use of the crafting system in a big way. Or, this is a perfect segue into my next topic, when the new player begins a game, how much more difficult is it for them if they don't have an established group already? Like, for example, when I joined, I had two friends that were already playing the game. They had a thatched farmhouse. We made a family, and therefore I already had land access. When I joined the game a second time, Rod, you already had property and established and a family, and therefore we already had access to property. Greg, when you joined, did you have people here already?
Well, kind of a sad story, actually. I'm a people person, so it didn't take me long to meet a guild, and it was on NA, actually. Made some friends, actually some really good friends, and the whole guild ended up leaving the game. I'm not sure if it was a game that had come out or what, but the guild leader left the game, and players either left or moved on to other things. And when that happened, I kind of fell out of NA and fell into our current guild, which I think is the best guild I've ever been in. So it's all about really getting out there and meeting people, but it's fortunate when you have some real-life friends, like the situation with us.
Right, so when you first started, you didn't have anyone, but you found a guild shortly after. Is that what I...
Yeah, it's certainly an easy thing. It's I don't have to worry about support. The system that's set up is very user friendly, open, and people definitely are accepting and wanting more allies.
So you began the game with Patron, basically, and then just straight up you didn't need any help because you basically could claim your own land and everything?
Oh, absolutely. I fell in love with the whole concept. Of course, I played Ultima Online, where the housing was the bomb. But when I played the alpha and Archeage, I was like, oh my God, why did it take so long for this to come around? I think it swept me away. So I instantly purchased the largest pack you could get for pre-ordering the founder packs. And I have no qualms about supporting this game as much as I can.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, when I started, I was free to play, and I was kind of really against subscription model games. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I didn't play WoW or Ultima Online or anything that required a subscription because I just didn't like monthly fees. I'm really against monthly fees. So I started free to play. The only way to make it, I found, as a free-to-play was to have access to land, because so many of these starter quests are like, grow some of this and grow some of that. Now, you can do all this illegally. You can still use land as much as you want, but if the game is in a high population kind of mode, which it was when I first joined, people are going to be stealing everything you put on the ground. Anything that goes down, they'll uproot it just for funsies, or they'll just steal it on you.
I'm sorry, I actually got wife aggro for a moment there, and I lost all train of thought.
No worries, no worries. I was just saying how when I first started the game, I started Patron because I had a abject abhorrence to subscription model. So
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
No worries.
I totally go back to 1998, I think. And I remember placing Ultima Online on the counter. And the guy super cool guy, we ended up being close because he was a gamer. Of course, we bond. He says, this has a subscription. And I swept that thing off that counter so quick, I was like, what? And I went back a month later because I kept thinking about what in the world that meant to me, what I was getting into, what are the possibilities, and the understanding of the costs for the company for these servers. And I've never looked back. MMOs, absolutely my favorite type of game. It's incredible to me.
Yeah,
So I can appreciate what you're saying.
Right. I mean, eventually I never paid for Patreon up until probably my last month in the game, which is that's a whole different story. I guess I can go into it, but like I played free to play that whole time. I geared to 50 and free to play. I didn't even get Patreon until afterwards, and I was like, you know what? Yes, this game is awesome. I'm level 50. I'm working on Hasla gear. I want Patreon. I want to go get involved in fishing. And you really can't do anything super labor intensive unless you have that labor regeneration and the increased cap of labor. So for me, finally I was like, I'm sick of paying for, I don't want to save up my 100,000 gold or whatever to buy one Apex, because it was only one Apex back then. And so I decided, you know what, screw it. I'm going to keep my gold. I'm not going to pay for Patreon with in-game money. I'm just going to throw them $15 and call it a good day. And it didn't feel so bad. It felt really rewarding, honestly. $15, just that one time $15 that I paid, that felt like I got a great deal. I got like over hundreds of hours of gameplay for $15. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the model they've set up is incredible. I'm totally for the free-to-play aspects of that, and bring people in and get them addicted and realize, hey, I need labor, and become, paying subscribers.
Yeah, which is what happened to my fiance as well. Like, she didn't really like it at first because the free-to-play aspect it's really tough, right? Really tough. But eventually, when you kind of look at the possibilities the game can offer, and it takes a while to get to that point, to see the possibilities of all the ocean and sailing and fishing and pirate combat, all that stuff. It doesn't really open up to you till you've already passed through like 5 or 6 zones in the game, and you're like already halfway through the level cap. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that Apex. I got Red over here at the house. He just went invisible, so he's probably going to try to kill me on my skateboard. You brought up the Apex. Something really interesting about Archeage is the player-driven economy. I love Apex. I think it's cool. I like the concept that the company is providing that option for us. But it's so interesting that when the game first released, the value of an Apex was $10. And the other day I sold one for $900.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, back then, I think I bought my first Apex for maybe 120-something gold. Now they're like 800, 900 each.
Well, that's like any MMO that offers that type of service. I've played EVE Online since 2006, and their service of Plex, when that first came out, it started off at about 130 million, and then it quickly jumped to 300 million. And I think last I was leaving EVE, it was over 1.2 billion of its game's currency.
I think it's just going up with the inflation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, most of these MMOs have no real good money sinks. I find with MMORPGs, gold comes into the game, but there's not a lot of NPC or non-player-driven things that take it out of the game world again.
Right.
So, like, once the money is in the world, that's it. It kind of just changes hands. So it kind of builds up, and that's what causes the inflation. So as a new player, sometimes it's really hard to get into the game, but it's not too bad in this game, I find.
Well, that's one of the things about Archeage is that since it's a player-driven economy, inflation, yes, it affects everyone, but also the price of all the other goods and things that you make and craft, they all go up with the inflation. So your gold that you can get out of the game economy, like with fishing or doing pack runs, that stays the same. That's static. But if you're selling materials that you have crafted or grown, those materials will retain value since their value is increasing with the inflation. since they're almost like a currency in this game, right? An extra currency.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting sidetracked.
Yeah, we're getting a little sidetracked.
But
okay, right. So hold on, let's get back to the new player experience. So we covered me, we covered Greg, we covered Rod.
I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think that's probably good for episode 1. What do you guys think? Were everybody happy with that?
Yeah, it was fun.
Any additional thoughts? Anything you want to say or give shout-outs to anybody?
Well, I'd just like to mention that I am going to start up the Facebook page there, so you could probably find that. I'm going to make it the Archeage Podcast, all one word on Facebook. So we'll put our links up there. We'll put up ways for guys to send suggestions, comments, and stuff for the podcast on there. Leave us feedback. I mean, any feedback's good feedback.
Right, and you'll be able to find us on iTunes and Android podcast programs under the Archeage Podcast, as well as you can reach us by email at the Archeage Podcast, all one word, at gmail.com. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send it to us. If you write something funny, we'll probably read it in the next episode. So yeah, totally go for that.
I'll put the email and Twitter and all the other stuff on the Facebook page because I think that will probably be easiest for people to find. All
right, cool. So next week we're probably going to have a guest on. I'm not quite sure exactly who it's going to be yet, but I've got a couple people lined up already. So I guess that'll be it for episode 1, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Yep, and don't forget if you got any suggestions for another topic, leave them on the Facebook and we'll go over that.
Sounds like a plan. All right, everybody, this is Germ signing off.
Rod saying goodnight.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next time.